Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, my name is Caroline and I make sewing tutorials and sewing patterns to help you along your sewing journey. And for today's video, I'll be attempting to recreate another House of CB dress. This time I tried to make the gorgeous Mademoiselle dress. I've been in love with this dress ever since I saw it for the first time. As usual for any House of CB dresses, I just love everything they make. And I'm really excited to try and make it, but it seems a little bit more complicated, so I've been postponing it for a bit. I've been planning this video for a while now, but I never really got down to it. But today is the day. If you're new here, I have already made a video on how to make the viral and iconic Carmen dress by House of CB. I'll link it in the description. I showed you how to make the pattern and everything. But since you guys asked, I also have a pattern on my shop inspired by this design. It's called the Juliana dress. The link will also be in the description. And I guess the Carmen dress and the Mademoiselle dress have kind of a similar look with the snatched waist and the flare skirt, but the pattern is very different. So I'll put photos up here so you can see the same things that I'm seeing, but as you can see, the Mademoiselle dress is a Bustier dress. According to the website, it has foam cups and everything, and I assume maybe even underwire. And I have to admit to you that I have never successfully made a pattern like this before. I tried it once back in 2019, but it didn't work out, so I just gave up. And then later, I kind of didn't want to risk it because there was a very popular pattern. You've probably heard of it, called the Rose Cafe Bustier dress by Daria Pattern Making. So I decided to just buy it instead of trying to make it myself. It is a really good pattern if you like to get it. If I remember correctly, it has a lot of different cup options. So if you don't feel super confident with your pattern making skills yet, I do recommend it. But the fit wasn't really perfect on me, and I think the shape of the cups are a little bit different. Like, this one seems a little bit more angled than the Rose Cafe Bustier dress. And I also want to try to make the pattern myself. I mean, it's been 5 years. I feel like today I could make it work. I have way more experience than I did back then. But I will admit this might be a little bit more complicated for a beginner. I usually say, oh, it's not that difficult. If I can make it, you can make it too. But this time I'm not that confident, so we'll see how it goes. After watching a few videos of the dress, I think the side panel, like the side back panel, was cut on stretchy fabric. I guess to make it comfortable while also snatching your waist. But I don't have this fabric, so I think I'm just going to swipe that with an open back with back ties, like a normal corset, just so I can make it tighter if I want. And the skirt seems to be cut in panels, like it has some seams in it. But to make it easier, I think I'm just going to cut a full circle skirt because it's really voluminous, so I think it's going to give the same effect. And to make the skirt really puffy, I'll also make a petticoat. I have never made one before, but I'll follow the same principles of a tiered gathered skirt, so I think it's going to work out, hopefully. So for the materials, I have 4 meters of this blue fabric. I'll be using this shirting fabric. It's made with 100% cotton, but one of the sides has a little bit of a sheen to it. I don't know if the camera will capture it really well right now. Here in Brazil, I bought it as tricoline. I have never really found the exact name of tricoline in English, but it's similar to cotton poplin, but it's like shirting fabric to make dress-up shirts. The original one was made with satin, I think, but I think this one is gonna work really well, and the color match was really good too. I also have this foam to make the cups, and I have forgotten to pick it up, but I also have this tulle. It's very stiff to make a very voluminous petticoat. Some underwire. Mine is made out of plastic, but it was the one that I found that fits the best around my boobs. Some plastic boning. And I don't know if I'll use this or not, but some blue underwire channeling, which I happen to have in a color that matches really well with the color of the dress. But that's gonna be inside, so if it's not matching, I don't think it would be a problem. And I already made the pattern this time, but don't worry, I'm gonna show you how to make it as well. It's just that I wasn't completely sure if it was going to work out or not, so I think I'm going to film the pattern making part later once I'm done with the dress, because if what I thought was gonna work doesn't really work out, at least I'll be able to give you a little bit more tips and teach you how to do it properly, you know? But yeah, when you see the pattern making bit, it's gonna be me from the future. But before we go into pattern making, I'd like to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning platform for creatives, with thousands of classes to choose from, all led by industry experts. And it's a great place for you to learn almost anything you like photography, video editing, illustration, productivity, and so much more. Sewing has been my main hobby for quite a while now, but recently I've been trying to find something else, and I fell in love with drawing. I have mentioned taking Chris Hong's classes before. I love her art and her YouTube channel too. And at first I didn't really think I had the talent for it, you know, because for some reason we always think that drawing is something that we need to be born with talent for. But honestly, I think learning the right skills and practicing are the most important parts. Skillshare has this learning path called Learn to Draw that takes you from the more basic steps to more advanced ones. And I also highly recommend Chris Hong's classes on Skillshare too. I'll link everything in the description. And if you'd like to join me and start learning or perfecting a new skill, the first 500 people to use my link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you, Skillshare, for sponsoring this video. And now let's go meet Caroline from the future to learn how to make the pattern. So I just copied the basic bodice block to another piece of paper. I have a video where I show you how to make yours using your own body measurements. I'll link it in the description of the video. But I do feel like I need to update that one. I just haven't had the time to make a new one yet. I want to film a new version because I have changed slightly the way that I make my basic bodice blocks, especially the bigger sizes. But for this design, it will still work out. You just need to measure the distance from your neck to the apex of your bust and make sure that this is the right spot. And you also need to measure the distance from apex to apex, divide it by 2, and make sure this is the right measurement. In my case, it still matches, but for bigger cup sizes, since originally I showed you that this line right here is the middle of the waist, it's not going to be the same if you have like a bigger waist. So ideally you should measure the distance between both apexes, divide it by 2, and place it in the center all the way to the side. It might happen that yours is smaller, so it would be a little bit here. The only thing that you have to do is just change the position of the dart to where the bust apex is supposed to be, and redraw the waist dart the same way that we made before. And now I'm going to show you all the things that I did to transform the basic bodice block into the corset. So this right here is the bust radius. I just measured, in my case, 6.5, which is from the apex all the way to where the curve of your breast ends, like the tissue ends. In my case, it's 6.5, so I just measured 6.5 all around, and I drew this guideline here. And to make it tighter, we're gonna have to enter a few centimeters. So at the bottom, right where the dart is, I'm going to enter 1 centimeter to each side and connect it to the waist. And up in here, I will also enter 1.5 centimeters and 0.5 centimeters to this side. This is because there will be ease around this area. We're just taking in the ease so it's tighter around our body. Here at the side, I am lowering 1.5 centimeters here, and I am entering 4 centimeters here. And to guide us with the little curve, I entered 1.5 centimeter here, and I went upwards 3 centimeters, and this will just connect with a curve. Here at the center for the separation, I will enter 1.25 centimeters. And I just need to connect this point to this point. But make sure this line right here is the same measurement as this one right here. And I'll connect this as a curve. So this one is the center front bodice and this is the side front bodice. And these are the cut pieces, but I left them without trimming the top just to make sure that once we sew it together like this, the angle is correct. And I'll trim the top. The back is very simple. I just traced the basic bodice block. And then I'm using the side front panel to mark the side. And I'm gonna make my ending right at the dart because this area right here will be tied. It is a little bit lower, around 1 centimeter lower than the side. And I'm just connecting it with a little bit of a curve. So these are all the pattern pieces. You need to add seam allowance all around all of them. In my case, I didn't add seam allowance to this part right here because I cut it on the fold of the fabric, but honestly, I ended up adding a boning at the center as well, so I would recommend also cutting this as 2 pieces instead of 1 and adding seam allowance here as well. So add seam allowance all around all of those pieces. The back is gonna be sewn like this, but you will need to cut 2 of each on the shell layer and 2 of each on the lining layer of fabric. So you will need to cut 4 of each in total. In my case, I will use the same fabric for both, for the lining and for the shell. So I had to cut 4 of each piece. And for the foam cups, you don't need to add seam allowance at all. You just cut exactly as it is on the foam cup. But if you're cutting on fabric, you need to add seam allowance all around. And for the full circle skirt, this is the template that I'm going to use to cut out my waist. You just need to take your waist measurement and divide it by 6.28. And the result that you get from that, you're going to use to measure all around to draw a half circle. So I measured 10.5 here, 10.5 here, 10.5 here, 10.5 here, all around, and then I drew the half circle. And we're going to place this on fabric. We're gonna have to cut 2 times because since it's a midi length full circle skirt, the fabric will not be wide enough for us to place this on the fold of the fabric, so we're gonna have to cut it twice. So yeah. So I'm gonna cut the skirt panels first because I will place the bodice pieces on the leftover fabric from the skirt because it will be a full circle skirt, so it's a really big one, even though it's midi. Had to take my bed out of the way the best way that I could, and now I'm gonna fold the fabric in the middle because I have 4 meters, so I'm gonna have a 2 meters long panel. Well, that's the plan. And now I'm going to take my measuring tape and I will measure from the paper all the way around for the length that I want my skirt to be. In my case, I'm going to make it 84, but you can make it shorter if you prefer. And I know what you must be thinking. Oh my god, this is so wrinkly. Yeah, I know. I did iron it in the morning before I started filming. Not that well, because I honestly hate ironing fabric and 4 meters is a bit too much. But this is a circle skirt, so I will have to trim the hem entirely because it will most likely deform later. So I'm not being too worried about it not being perfectly ironed. And now that everything is cut, I'm gonna start sewing the bodice pieces together. I'm gonna try to finish the bodice today. We'll see if I'll be able to do that, and then I'll only have to attach it to the skirt tomorrow. Let's be hopeful. Maybe I will be able to do this. So I'm gonna show you the right order on the sewing steps now. So I'm going to sew the center front to the side fronts and the side fronts to the back, placing them right sides together. Now I'm going to place them right sides together. And I'm gonna sew it right here and at the center, 1 centimeter away from the edge. Now I'm gonna turn the seam allowance towards the lining and I'm going to stitch it to the lining. I'll place it right sides together again just to sew the side seam because I'm going to add boning to the seam as well. Now I'm gonna make the channelings for the boning. I'm gonna pin it in place just so I know it's not moving. And I'm gonna sew 2 rows of stitching on each seam. The channeling needs to be wide enough to fit the boning, so I'm going to use around ½ centimeter to each side. I will add the boning later. I'm gonna start sewing the cups first. So I transferred the notch to the fabric. And now I'm just going to sew them right sides together, matching the notch and sewing. So I went ahead and I sewed the first cup off camera just to make sure I got all the steps correct so I wouldn't teach anything wrong. And I also made the straps. They're around 1 centimeter, a little bit less than 1 centimeter wide. And after doing a few tests, I figured out that the seam and the structure of the cup will look a little bit better if you do interface it before sewing it together. So this is the shell layer and this is the lining. I'm going to place them right sides together, but I will sandwich the strap in the middle. The seam allowance is 1 centimeter, so I'm gonna mark 1 centimeter here. And I'll place the strap on top of the mark just to make sure that I will sew with the proper seam allowance. And I'll place them right sides together here. You can sew the strap first before sewing the lining as well. It will make it easier. Now I'm gonna turn the seam allowance towards the lining and I'm gonna stitch it to the lining, very close to the previous seam. I'm going to place the right sides together again and I'm going to sew at this curve right here. And our cup is lined. It's very important to iron it so the seam sets better in place. And if you're adding foam cups like I am, this is the right time to add it inside. I'm going to put it here. And I'm gonna pin the fabric to the cup. Remember that there was 1 centimeter seam allowance here, so it's supposed to be a bit bigger than the actual cup. I'm going to pin it so the fabric is really well stretched and doesn't have any puckering around. So because of the understitching here, the lining is gonna end up being a little bit longer, but that's okay. So I'm going to top stitch all of the layers together so I don't need to keep all of the pins in here. And then I'm gonna trim the leftover of the lining underneath. Now it's time to start pinning it to the bodice. The seam allowance is 1 centimeter. So I'm gonna use the center seam, the edge of the center and the edge of the side to match with the curve here. I'll place the cup seam right on top of the bodice seam. Then I'll match the center like this, making sure they are really well aligned. And then I'll also make sure the side is really well aligned. And now we can keep pinning the rest of the curve. But they're opposite curves, so it's a little bit more challenging to pin and to sew. So we have to be very careful when we're sewing, go very slowly to make sure there aren't any folded parts underneath. Now we're going to sew around here, but being very careful. Now I'm gonna sew the channeling on top of the seam allowance so we can finish it professionally. Now I'm gonna top stitch the channeling down around here, but I'm going to do it from the outside just to make sure I don't accidentally sew it while it's folded like this and then it will look bad. So I'm gonna do it from the outside. I'll fold the edge inside, only off the center just to finish it off already, but I won't do it to the outside because we still need to put the boning and the other side needs to be open. I had to do it off camera, otherwise I just wouldn't be able to see. Now I'll fold this part under and top stitch here. And then I'm gonna add the boning. So that was all I had time to do on the first date. I did not do as much as I thought I was going to, but I did end up finishing the corset. It's here. And I don't know if you noticed the difference in the quality of the image, but in the meantime, I got a new lens. It got in the mail yesterday. This is the first time that I'm trying it. Is it a good idea for me to test it like as I'm filming? I don't think so, but it's a good lens. So hopefully the image is looking better and crisper and lighter as well, because it's a 1.4 lens, way better than the kit lens that I was previously using. And it's perfect because the day today is really cloudy and there's barely any sunlight, so it got here at the right time. I hope it's looking great, but since it's a 30mm and it's kind of more zoomed in, I had to put the camera really far away from me, and I am nearsighted. I think that's how you call it. Myopia? In Brazil we say myopia. I have 8 degrees. I have no idea how to say the specs in English, but I have 8 degrees on each side. I cannot see very far away, and I'm wearing lenses, like contact lenses of course, but still I think they're not up to date because I cannot see my face on the camera visor at all. I'm trying, but I cannot tell if it's focused or not. Let's hope it is. But as I was saying, I finished the bodice, the corset, almost. I still need to add the grommets and everything, but I'm not completely satisfied with it. I feel like the fit is actually good. I think I got it right, but the cups are cool as well. But the problem is with the bodice pieces, like here. I don't know if you can see, since I cannot see the visor properly, but it's kind of wrinkly, right? At the seams and everything, it's kind of wrinkly, and I think the reason why it's like that is because I didn't interface the bodice pieces. I should have, and I will make sure to mention that at the pattern making part that I'm going to film after I'm done. But I feel like if I had interfaced the bodice pieces, it would have been better. The reason why I didn't do that is because I didn't think I would have to, because for the Juliana corset dress, all of the versions that I made of that dress and the corset top and everything, I also used technically the same fabric as this one, which is tricoline de algodão, cotton poplin. I just said everything in Portuguese, sorry. It's technically the same one, but I think the other fabrics are more for craft, like they're thicker. And this one is way finer, so it didn't give me enough structure, enough support, so I think I should have interfaced all of the pieces. My mistake. I'm not gonna redo everything. This is how it's gonna be like, but if I make it next time, I will make sure to interface it so it has more structure. But what I have to do now is I am going to cut the back panel right in the middle, like right here, because I'm gonna attach the zipper, right? And I will also sew the skirt pieces together, but I'm gonna sew it with French seams. French seams. So I'm gonna sew them with the wrong sides facing, and then I'm gonna trim it, and then I'm gonna sew it with the right sides facing. So the seams are inside, because my overlocker has black thread at the moment. I think it's on, like, I think you can see, I think this is the overlocker. Cannot say it properly, but I think this is the overlocker. So as you can see, it has black thread in it, and I do not feel like changing it right now, so I'm just gonna sew it with French seams, and it's gonna make it look even better. But yeah, I'm gonna sew the skirt panels and then sew the skirt to the bodice. I'm finishing with Buns Bunny. And then I'm gonna start working on the petticoat. Hopefully I'll be able to finish, now I can see myself. Hopefully I'll be able to finish the petticoat today as well. And then tomorrow I will only have to hem the bottom of the circle skirt, because it does need to hang overnight because it will deform. So let's go. So the dress is almost finished. I still need to add the grommets to the back and sew the straps to the back as well, but I think I'm going to make the straps adjustable. We'll see. And of course, I still need to hem it, but that's something that I'll only do tomorrow. The inside is looking so pretty, really well finished. I'm really proud of this. And now it's time to start working with this monstrosity of tulle, because I'm gonna make a petticoat to go underneath the dress to give it a lot of volume, and I want to make it separate from the actual dress so I can reuse it later in other projects. So I'm actually gonna sew it to a piece of elastic that's gonna go around my waist, but a little bit lower, because if I put it right here, I think it might be too bulky. So I think I'm going to put it slightly lower than the actual waist of the dress. And I measured the tulle and I have around 3 meters by 2.4 meters. I don't think I'm gonna use everything because maybe it would just be too much, too puffy, but I will use the same principles as I did to make the tiered gathered skirt. I'm going to tell you guys all the measurements that I used, but yeah, I just need to cut all the strips of the tulle and then gather them, which will take a bit of time, and then sew them to each other. It's not difficult, but tulle is a little bit rough on the skin, so I'm not really looking forward to manually gathering it. I'm gonna try to do it by raising the tension on the machine. We'll see if it'll work. But yeah, so far, that's it. I still need to finish the petticoat and add the grommets to the back of the dress. That took forever, but the first tier was already sewn to it. As you can see, there are little pleats instead of being evenly gathered, but it's gonna be underneath, so I don't think that's gonna be a problem anyways. This already took so long, and now I have to do the longer layer. So, it's gonna be double the length. Yay! So I just finished the petticoat. As you can see, I sewed the 3 layers, and I decided to add an underskirt to it. It's just a rectangle of fabric, like 140 centimeters wide and around 80 centimeters long of rayon that matches the color of the dress. And I sewed it to the elastic just like I did the tulle, because it was kind of really rough on the skin and it was bothering me a little, and right now it's way more comfortable than it was before. And I just finished the dress. I finished hemming it and I tried it on with the petticoat underneath, and I think this is like my favorite thing I've ever sewn, like ever. Do I have a place to wear this? No, but I'm so glad that I made it. It's almost perfect because, I mean, I should have interfaced the bodice pieces. You should definitely do that yourself if you plan on making this. But in the end, I still pretty much loved it, and I hope you guys liked the video and the tutorial as well. I don't know if I'll have time to make a Halloween video, but once I tried it on, this was honestly giving a bit of Cinderella vibes. So I'm just gonna run with it. I will put the try-on portion of the video right now, don't worry. But before I go, if the video was helpful to you in any way, please don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really hope you liked the tutorial, and I hope to see you guys around next time as well. Bye!